Hey, this is Flakes. If you saw my last video on the rules of spell chess, then you might be thinking that's all well and good, but what's it like playing an actual game in this variant? And that's a completely legitimate question. So, how about today we play some actual games? I'm going to set the rating range to hopefully get a experience something like a new player, and we are going to jump in at the standard time control of 5 minutes on the clock with a 2-second increment, and we will see what we get. Here we go. We get white. Let's play e4, and we do get the correct move, c6. So here, can play d4, bishop c4, either are good. I usually play d4, but let's do the thing you most see at this level and play bishop c4. Idea of this is to attack the pawn, potentially taking with a freeze on the king, and then bring other pieces to attack as well. Okay, so here we see, I think, an attempt to prevent this. Our bishop's frozen. Now, we have a couple ways to deal with this. The best one is to jump the pawn and take the queen. If that wasn't available to us, we could also sidestep the king, and then we would win a a freeze. But actually, we're winning a freeze this way as well, at the cost of a jump. But it's well worth it to win the queen for the price of a rook, and black just resigns. Okay, so we can actually look a little bit further at what could have happened. So here it would have been probably very tempting for black to jump and recapture, but this is instantly losing because black's freeze is on cooldown from freezing these pieces a moment ago. So what we would have done is frozen the king and administered any check. Looks like the only one we have is this, which is mate because black is unable to counterfreeze the bishop. No other pieces can take the bishop, and therefore that is mate. If we back up a little bit more, the fatal mistake was bringing the queen here with the freeze. Both elements of this move are problematic. The queen, of course, because we can take with the jump, and the freeze because we have many ways of saving our king without spending the counter freeze, so we would win a freeze either way. Right, let's play another. We get white again, a little bit of a higher rated opponent this time, and we see e5. So typically I know a whole bunch of theory that I would deploy here, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's just play normally. Bishop c4. It's now much more difficult for black to deal with potential threats against f7 due to the e-pawn being pushed past e6. Let's not hang our king to the jump. Black was threatening to jump here and take. So we get a tempo. Now black is threatening potential freeze tactics. So because black has this counter check, it would not be helpful at all for us to go for this now. We would just end up trading freezes. Let's develop the queen, sort of setting up a scholar's mate sort of idea. Black can pretty easily defend with queen e7, but then the queen will be maybe a little bit stuck, and then we can just develop. Maybe knight e2. Ooh, okay. We have the knight trying to cut off the queen's attack, but we can actually just take with the bishop anyway. We don't even have to freeze. If the king takes, we would jump the knight and win the king, and the game, of course. Now, I still don't think it does a great deal for us to take with a freeze because of the counter freeze. We would just trade. Well, actually, is that true? Because we would have this battery. The king wouldn't be able to take. All right, let's calculate. Let's do a little bit of calculation. So freeze this stuff, take, and if black counter freezes and takes here, we could take and the king wouldn't be able to take. So we're winning a pawn, and I don't really want to calculate that much in this video anyway. So let's just take normally, no freeze. Bishop is poisonous, king cannot take because it's of the relatively straightforward jump threat. If the king steps over here behind the bishop, we're able to pull the bishop back with a discovery, considering the jump. So black pretty much has to play king e7. And after king e7, I'd really love to get the bishop in here. Of course, it's behind a pawn. I definitely don't want to use a jump on that because, well, our jump would be on cooldown, and we would not be threatening anything here, having just spent a jump to get over this pawn. So instead, we could consider d4 in that position, gaining tempo on the bishop. If black takes with the pawn, then we could bring the bishop here, which would be threatening the king, which would at that point be standing on e7. I think the only way to get away would be king d6, and at that point things are looking very, very good for us, with black's king in the middle of the board and us having the bishop pair very active. What else could black do? No, anything else really makes the situation worse for black, I think, because bishop steps back, the same thing happens. And if black tries to prevent the bishop from coming here, we just take and win a piece, which would also be very, very good for us. What other ideas do we have? I mean, we could play b4 as well. That's a move in some positions, but I think d4 is going to be quite a bit better. Now, what if black were to freeze our bishop? I don't think that would work. Using a freeze as the first freeze when you're on the back foot, when you're defending, is often a harbinger of doom, because there's many cases where your opponent can freeze while you're on cooldown, and since they're the one attacking, they probably still have some threats toward you. So if they were to freeze and take, no, we just counter freeze right here, and it's really not clear how black would get away. Even taking with check here would not help, because taking the king overrides check, so we would go ahead and jump the knight and take the king, and we would win. So a freeze of the bishop seems like a no-go to me. Well, as long as you take. I guess black doesn't have to take. But using a freeze is strictly worse than not in this position, because then black is just down a freeze in addition to having a king in big trouble. Now, often when you see this bishop coming in, and if there was a freeze here, one of the reasons that I didn't like that a whole lot is that rook here is often a move. Now, in this case, I think we actually could have brought the queen in different ways, but rook to f8 in similar positions is an idea to be aware of. Our opponent's going to need to make their decision very quickly. 4, 3, 2, 1, flag. Okay. Yeah, black was in a big trouble here. If we back it up just to show a little more concretely what I was talking about, if the king takes, of course, we would jump the knight, take the king, and that's instantly winning. If the king steps here, we have many ideas. This is a move. Now we are threatening the knight again. We could maybe think about jumping and taking the rook, but honestly, I just would have made some bishop discovery and then looked for tactics next, because there's very, very likely to be something. And at the very least, I mean, this position is really, really good. And if black doesn't want to deal with that, king here would have played d4. If they don't deal with the pawn, I'm going to take the bishop. So probably we'd see pawn takes. Then I would have brought the bishop here, again threatening to jump the knight and take the king. The queen also has that ability, so taking that bishop is also off the table. So king d6 if black doesn't want to deal with the bishop discoveries. Although given how dicey king d6 looks, maybe black should try their luck with the bishop discovery. Yeah, pretty tough. Let's see, where did it go wrong? I think here, allowing our bishop to come in with all those tactics. So what should black have done instead? Well, to really get to the root of it, I always recommend that in response to e4, you play c6, and then if white does this, you have e6 available, cutting off a lot of tactics there. So not having that e6 resource, I think, caused black a lot of trouble. They try to take our king, but no, we can deal with that. And instead of bringing the knight, what to do? Now, queen here does not work. Actually, does it work? It might... no, it loses the bishop at best, because we would do this, and the threat is that we would come in next with the bishop, delivering a check, and black would not be able to recapture our queen. Thus, offering a queen trade is often quite dangerous. So instead, I don't know, it's actually really tough. I think you've got to play queen e7. And then if freezes happen, the king can maybe step over, maybe the queen will be able to take. But it's a whole lot less dangerous than allowing this sort of check that we got here. Okay, let's see what else we can get. All right, we get the black pieces against a 1600. Okay, we are going to have to pay attention here. Let's play c6. I know we got e3 from white instead of e4, but it's still a use of the e-pawn, threatening to develop the queen and the bishop. And okay, we see the queen making a threat on our king, threatening to jump f7 and win our king. Let's not have any of that. And the best way to deal with this is to notice the rook alignment with the queen and jump over our own pawn and take. So we have won a queen for a rook, just trading the jumps. Yeah, white does recapture, that makes sense. Now, white's next plan is very likely to go here, threatening our king. Now, they won't be able to do that, or they won't be able to make the jump immediately because their jump is on cooldown. They're going to have to make 2 moves before they can use the jump again. So what I'm calculating is whether we have time for this, threatening, or rather defending h7. Here, the rook will probably come to e5, setting up the threat, but actually not threatening yet, because that'll be only 1 move. And then we can do this, preparing to block, and then we will have another move to defend by blocking off the e7 square. So let's do that. Very likely to see rook e5. Yep, we do. Now notice the move list here. On move 3, white used the jump. On move 4, they went without a jump, so that's 1, but they will not be able to jump next. So e6 is not going to lose us the game. Now it's very likely that we'll see a freeze. They're going to try to freeze to buy time. Okay, maybe not, maybe not. Now they have made 2 moves without the jump, and now they are actually threatening to take the king. Let's not have any of that. We will block with the bishop. The rook will not be able to jump both at once. Now, the bishop is probably wanting to come here, but I am not afraid because it is not possible to freeze the king and all these pawns at the same time. That's in a 4x2, not a 3x3. So that is no issue, and this pawn is defended by the knight, and the knight's not critical for anything else. So we're fine. Let's activate our queen, pressuring the rook. If white's knight ever moves, we will win the rook with an attack on the king. It also makes a little bit of space for our king, so we can sidestep if we so choose. Now the rook is threatening this pawn. It's not threatening to jump here because our knight will just take. Now, we do have the option of jumping our knight and taking with the bishop. That is an exchange for a jump, which often is not good. I'm considering here whether there's enough material off the board for it to be okay for us to not have the jump. I don't really like that, because white will have the bishop pair as well as a remaining rook. So I am actually going to just nudge the king over, and the dark square bishop that white has back here is not in play, so I'm not concerned about jump threats in that regard. We are also pressuring the h2 pawn, so if this knight ever moves, we will get some infiltration. Right, the knight can't really come in. If there, I'm happy to trade it off. How do we get our pieces in play? I think let's maybe use the queen side. Expand over here. This also cuts off the c4 square for white's bishop in case that diagonal becomes relevant. And I think, oh, that's very interesting indeed. Get a freeze. So of course they're preventing us from taking the rook, but I don't see another threat right now, which means I don't see any obligation to counter freeze. At least to counter freeze the rook. We should be looking for opportunities to make an attack on the king. Now I'm looking at queen here, but it with a freeze of these squares. But it does not work because the knight will just come in and block our jump threat. So that's no good. We could counter freeze, and I think we'll win the rook. Or at least the knight. Maybe the knight will come here to attack the queen and we take there. Can we use the knight? I don't see a way to use the knight. Taking here with the queen with no freeze is no good. That just blunders the queen for no reason. Oh, here's an idea. We can make two threats just normally. Normal chess. That seems pretty good. Let's hit the knight. I don't see any serious issues happening on our king side. So even if white does go for this, we're not even going to lose a pawn. We should win an entire piece as well as the freeze. So things are looking pretty good. Which will white decide to save? Saves the rook. That makes total sense. Now, we do still have the opportunity to freeze without white being able to counter. So if we wanted to be really adventurous, we could maybe freeze here and take the rook. The king would be able to step away. And we'd have to be really, really careful because there's been a bit of a shift. White froze the turn before, not just now. So we would then have a step where we couldn't counter freeze. However, we need to not flag, so let's just take the knight. Going to need to take full advantage of this 2-second increment for the remainder of the game. I think next we'll probably come here, develop our bishop, try to trade it off for white's more active bishop. And after the trade, there's no problems with the rook jumping and taking because we would do the same and we would win in exchange. Ooh, okay. Now, oh wait, it doesn't quite work. I was going to do this and counter freeze there, but it doesn't work. Let's hit the rook, making a second attack. So we're threatening to recapture the bishop, as well as hitting the rook. So even though white has just taken a piece, we are going to get it back, and we will win a freeze. We'll be up 2 freezes, which is looking very, very, very good for the endgame, as long as I don't flag. Let's see which white saves. Okay, let's take the rook. Let's activate our knight via this square. We just have to watch out for threats on our king. This diagonal could become an issue. I might want to nudge the king back to e8. Yeah, okay, so here comes the threat. Let's step our king to safety. This pawn's still defended by the knight, so I'm not worried about bishop here. And as soon as we're safe, okay, looks like we're safe to come here. I could have maybe even jumped and taken, but I don't think that's extremely necessary. Ooh, actually, I just noticed that we could do this. Okay, that's fine, I think. Yeah, I don't have time to explain, but this is completely winning. We're threatening to freeze the king and take here with the queen, and white will have no way to escape the jump. Let's see if they find it. If they save the king, we take the bishop, of course, and then we're up a 3rd freeze. Okay, they do not see it, so we're going to freeze all of this stuff, take here. There is no way to capture the queen. The king cannot run away because it's frozen, and cannot counterfreeze because it is on cooldown. So that is Spellmate. The king will fall on the next turn. Let's jump the pawn and take the king and win a very good and tough game. Our opponent did put up some amount of, actually some pretty good resistance. They want a rematch, but we're going to have to move on. Good game to our opponent. Let's look briefly back at what's happened here. Yes, this was definitely the biggest mistake of the game, and a very common mistake, in fact, is to put the queen on these, on the edge files where the rook can jump and take them. We did have to watch out. Had to think kind of hard about whether it's safe to do this. Now, if you wanted to try to play it safe in some sense, you could have played e6 here with the idea that if the rook comes to attack the king, we have even more time and it's clearly safe from that angle. But we do have potential issues with the rook taking here and invading back here. And in the past, I have played in this style where we bring the queen to f6 and we threaten the rook, if it were to come here, threaten to take with the jump. And then we are up an entire queen for a jump. Our opponent does have the only jump and the bishop pair, so it's not completely over, but black is looking pretty good. Let's see, what else? Yeah, we saved our king just to show what would have happened if white tried to freeze, with the idea that now we don't have this move available to us. Fortunately for us, they don't really have a lot of attacks available. If, say, the bishop comes here trying to hope that we counter freeze, and then they can come here with two threats toward the king. This doesn't actually work at all because we would counter freeze the rook and take the bishop, and then we will have plenty of time next turn. All right, let's move on. Okay, white, one more time. Let's see. Okay, we get e5 again, so we're going to play the simple bishop threat idea. What does black have in store for us? Last time in this position, we got bishop here, which didn't really do black a great deal of good because we just blocked. Queen e7, maybe even f6 is a move, but you... Oh, okay. So black is trying to take our king by jumping here and capturing with the bishop, and they've spent a freeze to do it. Now, this allows us to gain a freeze because we can deal with the threat without using a freeze. We use the knight, and now there are two pieces in the way, and black is not able to jump them both. Now, we are actually threatening mate in one here. We could freeze here and take this. Ah, okay, so we are going to see it. It is going to be spellmate rather than checkmate. If we do freeze here, that would not work because the queen would just back up and take, and that would backfire completely. So instead, we're going to freeze all the relevant pieces, come in with the bishop. Black is not able to counter freeze, having just used the freeze here. They've gone only one move without using the freeze, not two, so they won't be able to use it again this turn. Queen can't back up and take the bishop, the king can't escape, nothing can take the bishop, so this is spellmate, albeit not checkmate. Reason for that is that our bishop is included in the freeze, and therefore at the moment it's not administering a check to the king. But as soon as it's the beginning of our turn, the freeze will expire, and we will be able to take black's king. Let's see what our opponent tries to do. Yeah, there's nothing to be done. Let's take the king and win the game. Back up a little bit and see what black could have done. So again, gotta play c6 in response to e4. It'll keep you out of a great deal of trouble. This was definitely the most serious mistake of the game because black has used a freeze, but we do not have to use a freeze, so we haven't spent any material nor a freeze. We've just won a completely clean freeze, there was this threat which was not stopped. Now black could have saved themselves by taking the knight, so that would be one move without a freeze, and we would not be able to do this. This is not checkmate, and in fact it loses us the game instantly because black's move, and only legal move actually, is to take our king via the jump. So that would be disastrous. We would not do that. We would have to take the bishop. I don't know if it matters which way I take. So black would then have done one move without the freeze, then they would make their second move. Maybe queen here? Sure. And now, if we were to do this, black's freeze would just come back, and it would not be a complete disaster. The position's probably still not all that great for black, but they don't instantly lose. All right, I think that's going to do it for today. Do have a go at playing spell chess. It's at chess.com/variant. Select spell chess from the list on the right. Let me know in the comments how you do, and also let me know if you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to cover. That's all for today. Bye.